This is End Time.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Time. My name is Nicholas Lamar Suter. Thank you all for joining us. So, there's a lot going on that needs to be covered in the U.S. There's been a spat of shootings, specifically in Texas. Everyone feels ambivalent about that, of course. The Trump deposition has gotten... I didn't think I could despise Trump anymore until he said that he's not guilty because while he in fact did all these things, she liked it. So that was former President of the United States in a deposition in his trial for, this was this the one? He's got too many sexual assault trials and or defamation trials going. So it's on our Discord. Come in, join us, and see what's going on there. We need to cover all of that, but we've had a number of opportunities to talk to some very interesting people about Ukraine, and we talk about Ukraine every single week, and there's a reason it's important. So we will still be having Starsky on this Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. We'll have Commander Lance McMillan, who is with us right now. He will be on Friday for downtime, and we'll be talking about who knows what then. We also will have Pat Lowinger on next week at this time to discuss misconceptions about policing in the United States. And 2 weeks from today, Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, former commander of NATO ground forces and former commander of all European forces for the United States. He will be on to discuss NATO's position on Ukraine, strategic and tactical issues regarding both Ukraine and the changes in NATO and its relationship to Russia. So a lot of interesting things to discuss. But for today, we have on someone who's a second time being here. She was on for our charity stream, which did spectacularly well, I thought. And I'd like to thank, again, everyone who helped out with that and gave us super chats for that, because it made a huge difference. And she is now back with us to discuss what she is observing as a citizen in Ukraine and what she has been through and how and why she streams what she does. Welcome, Anna from Ukraine.
Hello, guys. Happy to be with you and honored to be with you, and super grateful for this opportunity to tell more about my country, Ukraine, and for your support that you demonstrate daily.
Well, thank you very much. It's I was going to say it's an honor to be able to do so, or a privilege. It's not. I'd really rather we didn't have to, but given that we have to, I'm glad we can. So, you and I had met on the shills briefly, and we've had on Starsky a lot, and we value having him on because he tells us from a military perspective what's going on and what the situation looks like, what the soldiers are going through. But we haven't really talked too much about what it's like for civilians who are experiencing that. So could you please tell me where and when were you born?
Well, I was born in the end of 80s in Ukraine, that at that moment was a part of the USSR, but in the western part of Ukraine, which is now considered a semi-safe zone. And it allows me to work and to imitate normality, because when your country is at war, war is present in every aspect of your life. And even today, we had funerals in the center. I live close to the central cathedral, so I witness almost, I don't want to say daily, but every 3 days we have military funerals, which gather lots of people. So even if you want to forget for a second or two, you cannot. We live with this air raids, we live with an ability to plan, to visualize your future, I don't know, to plan your vacation or birthday party, because everything is actually surrounded by this atmosphere of war. Many things changed, like for every Ukrainian, and there are some, of course, there are lots of negative changes in our reality, but at the same time, we have discovered some strengths, I believe, that keep us strong as a nation and allow us to continue fighting against Russian invasion. And like I have spent all of my life living here. Of course, I travel and I like traveling and discovering many things, but I associate myself with my country, and I feel it's important to stay for me because I'm very connected to the things that are going on in my country, and I want to be present when something important happens, or I want to be useful. And from one point of view, it's impossible to live normal life in a country at war, but from the other point of view, we all are trying to preserve this normality in the spheres of life where it is possible, like university studies, hospitals, I don't know, shops, and so on, because we plan, we have to win this war, and the country has to be able to return back to normality, to start its rebuilding, like to stay a real country.
Now, you were born after the Cold War, is that right?
Yes. I was born in 1984.
Okay, 1984. So there was still a Soviet Union, but it broke up
Yes.
probably when you were about 8 or 9 years old.
I went to school when Ukraine was already independent. So I was not a pioneer or 𝐓𝐢𝐤𝐿𝐴, as they call it. I was not introduced to Lenin doctrine, and that was a very nice wave of cultural revival. You know, people were optimistic. I believe people even in Russia were more optimistic about their future. From one point of view, my parents told me that for teachers it was a bit difficult what to say to children on this very first days when Lenin is no more a leader. But at the same time, this was a period when Ukrainian culture, language, all of that was booming. So I am able to feel that heritage of Soviet Union, because, you know, every empire, after it falls, it dissolves for a certain period of time. And actually, I believe that Russian war in Ukraine is the end of Soviet Union, is the dying monster. This is the agony. But at the same time, I was already a student and at school as an independent in the independent Ukraine. And of course, I am grateful for that.
Was Russia as a country something you were concerned about? Was it sort of this looming monster? Was it something you thought about? And what were your views? What were the views of other Ukrainians?
For me, Russia was an enemy because, I believe that many Ukrainians share that opinion, that we were not just like naturally part of Soviet Union, but we were actually occupied by Soviet Union. We had a short spell of independence, 1917, 1922, and later, first one half of Ukraine was occupied by Soviets, and then the other half in 1939. And this period, especially these first decades of communist regime, turned very dramatic and very bloody for Ukrainians. We've lost millions of people and in Holodomor. We realize they disrespect private property, and Ukrainians are very much about private property, getting something, building something, developing something. And many people realized it's not the country they want to live in, but Stalin has turned on his terror machine and there was no option to escape it. And today we communicate on this special day, the 9th of May, when Russia marks Victory Day. Most of the world celebrates it on the 8th of May, the day before. And I belong once again to a very large number of Ukrainian people not spoiled by Soviet propaganda, who realized that Second World War perhaps should have continued after the fall of the Nazi regime until the fall of the communist regime. And many smart military men were talking about that. But the world was tired, was exhausted of war. And to some extent, many Eastern European countries like Ukraine, like Poland, like Baltic countries were sacrificed. And we just switched from one danger to another. And the number of victims of communist regime is really huge too. So we had Soviet Union had a policy of this forced migration of people, and there were lots of Russians on various leading positions in Ukrainian institutions, hospitals, universities, and they have always demonstrated very chauvinistic, very arrogant behavior, not wanting to learn the language, assimilate, mocking Ukrainian pronunciation, anything. So since childhood, I've known such people. They were working with my parents, and I disliked that. Of course, it was not like hatred or something, but I knew that Russians are like that. Russians are negative towards Ukraine. They like jokes about Ukrainians. They disrespect. They still, even after the fall of the Soviet Union, they still feel this is their zone of influence. And I personally hate this phrase. What zone of influence, right? And so for me, knowing that our troubles with Russia began 3 centuries ago in the times of Russian Empire. So for me, it was definitely a country I don't like. And I have never been to Russia, but I've been to Belarus, looking at their lifestyle, looking at their films. Being a child, I did not like that. I didn't want to be a part of Ruski Mir. So for me, they were always a country I was happy we are far away from. And did I believe full-scale war is possible? No, because I was my subscribers advised me to say this is normalcy bias. It is totally illogical. We all see now they cannot win us. This was wrong. This was a wrong decision. They cannot achieve even the things they want. So I thought they will not start it, but they did. So now, of course, my feelings towards Russia are extremely negative. I am an educated person. I know you have to be tolerant. We have to respect other cultures. But I ask my subscribers not to inspire me to be super positive or neutral towards Russians in general, because it's difficult during war, and it is going to be difficult even after we win. Because I have no doubts that we have to win. Because Putin is a product of Russian society. It's not something, he was not brought to Russia by aliens. They do not object against him. And he is the product of their society. And every decade or every 50 years, they produce a monster, be it Stalin, be it Putin, and something similar may happen in future. So we have to be prepared, always having such a neighbor.
What were your plans before the war? So say maybe a year or two before the war, you were living a life. What were you planning on doing?
Well, I was planning on continuing my life. Well, I am a university teacher. I was writing my postdoc, which is dedicated to English language in the European Union. I have an NGO that works in the sphere of cultural heritage preservation, and we ran a couple of interesting projects. And also, I write and I love writing. And I was working with one Ukrainian newspaper and I enjoyed it a lot. So I kind of saw my personal plans in the development of my writing skills and traveling, like enjoying life, helping my country, because I like various initiatives, reforms, not in this like purely economic, political sphere, but more cultural, educational. I feel this is my cup of tea. So that was my life. But of course, since 2014, we always had that bad feeling. You cannot like relax because the war started for us in 2014. It did not end. It went into this very wrong, very unhealthy, frozen stage or something when people were dying, but not that many. And like we were not good to make friends, to accept us in various unions and alliances for investment, which Russia always wanted. But at the same time, it felt like everything is localized and more or less under control. Ukrainian armed forces are developing. But at the same time, there was always this shadow, if it's possible to say so, cast over like each of your plan, every Olympic Games, they were talking Russia can attack another part of Ukraine. Or like you can never fully relax. You're constantly waiting for something evil to happen. And then when you are warned that this bad will happen, a contrary thing happens. It's, I don't know, human brain or human mechanism of self-defense. You start thinking, no, it's impossible. It cannot be that way. It cannot happen. And then it happens. And then you lose fear. During this war, I'm not a soldier, I'm not in a trench, but I've lost many fears, many of my fears. You know, after something really bad happens, fear disappears. Like there is no more need to be afraid because it's actually happening. And you have to turn on this acting regime, acting mode. And this is what happened to my country. This is what I see in most of us.
So what were your thoughts when, you know, they had already taken Crimea, but they were ostensibly holding there, but there's this sense of impending doom and that they could come in at any time, and then all of a sudden, basically, what very quickly was obviously a full-scale invasion, going after Kyiv, going after Kharkiv, going after every major city in Ukraine. What were your thoughts as you were watching them essentially roll over the map?
Well, first, I was angry at Ukraine and I was angry at the world when Crimea was annexed, because the reaction was very weak. We could not react because we were in the process of elections. We did not have a president. We did not have a parliament. Like it was very important to fix everything and to become this legitimate country again. Because, Russian propaganda still uses this coup, revolt, or whatever. So it was like we were not healthy at that moment. And the world was afraid of escalation, was concerned. And once again, I believe we did not have army because Russians were planning their operation for a long period of time. Just they wanted this soft annexation, something similar to Belarus. They did not plan war. They were slowly sending Russian citizens to occupy various positions in Ukrainian government. They were buying Ukrainian weapons. They were demilitarizing us in all possible ways. And many people who were making decisions in police, in army, at the moment of Revolution of Dignity were actually Russians. Our Minister of Defense had a Russian passport. How can a Minister of Defense of an independent country be a citizen of another country? That is a special operation. But they failed because of this character of Ukrainians. They did not believe is real because Russians do not demonstrate that. And they take it for granted. They honestly believe that we are very similar, that we are like brothers, and that we will act the way Russians do. But we don't. And that was, from one point of view, their failure, but they got Crimea. And it's bad from the ideological point of view that the world did not react, and Putin, as a bully, realized, okay, I can continue. Inside Russia, he develops this idea of weak West. Come on, how weak the West is. They don't say anything. Like, we do whatever we want, and like people don't notice that. And also it's bad strategically, because as we see later, Crimea was used for many attacks on Ukraine. And in this war, in this second stage of war, full-scale war, it was important. Also, I feel extremely angry at our politicians, but many of them, once again, were Russia-funded figures back in the beginning of 2000s for allowing Russian Navy to stay in the Crimea. For example, Sevastopol was a Russian city, but not because Russians live there historically or something. It was full of Russian military men who came there to work. And part of their work was actually to occupy Ukraine. So, and they were allowed to do so. Why? Because many of our politicians were either Russians or Russia-funded people. And that was sad. And about full-scale war, like, it was a very difficult period. We've had this feeling. Once again, I was trying, like, everywhere they say, think positive. So I was using that advice. I was trying to think positive. I was choosing analytics and articles of those who said, no, full-scale war is impossible. Like, everything is under control. They are just playing with their muscles. Or maybe a minor operation will take place in the east of Ukraine, but all the armed forces are now much better. They are well trained, and they will protect us. Plus, we have more allies. We know how to speak. So I was more like concentrated on this, and I was trying to calm myself down. Because, come on, I have some people asking me, like, why didn't Ukrainians evacuate before the war? Where?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
First of all, that's your house. That's your home. Nobody wants to leave a home unless it's like death threatening. Then who would accept you? Like, I have a feeling something bad is going to happen. No one will react to that. So I was trying to calm myself down. But at the same time, all the conversations, I guess in winter 2022, they were about war. And people were trying to support each other, saying, okay, it's impossible, but like everyone was talking only about that. So I remember receiving a phone call, and when you receive a phone call at 5 a.m. or 5, I guess, you always know it's something bad. It's never something good. And we heard just one phrase, it started. And you don't ask questions, what started? Like, you realize what started. You start looking at Facebook, and you see it everywhere. You see that, like, the worst thing, Kyiv is targeted. And then 20 minutes after you receive the call, you hear explosions. I heard explosion in my own city. And you realize it's here. It's not just like, it's so quickly how it moves. Like, the worst thing was how quickly it moves. Because honestly, I thought it's possible, but somewhere on the East front lines where we had lots of soldiers. And no, it's everywhere. Your capital, your heart is bombed, and then you hear explosions in your city, Lutsk, which is like 80 kilometers to the borders of EU. And like, it has never been a super strategic point. Like, no military plans, nothing, forests, lakes. And you hear these explosions. You realize it's not just in Kyiv, it's in your city. And I had this feeling. I don't know. I did not feel fear, and many people say they did not feel fear. They felt, I cannot say it's a relief, because definitely it's not, but we were living in this environment of Russian lies for a long period of time. And I personally think that starting from 2014, we were losing informational war. People did not want to think much about Crimea annexation, anti-terroristic operation in Ukraine. Russian politicians were still central on various events, and Russian narrative was dominant. And all people, smart people, good people, political leaders, global political leaders, were trying to persuade the world and everybody that, well, nothing serious is happening. We will talk to Russia, it will stop or something. But that's what they wanted to the world to believe, and the world accepted this. And then when it all began so openly, so brutally, we had this feeling like, now you see. Well, now actually the world, you see what we were trying to tell, that it's not just like misunderstandings. It's not just the police operation of Russia or something. This is an angry, brutal terrorist state invading an independent country. And we had to, like, everything became real. And sometimes it's easier to act when your premonitions actually become your reality and you don't have time to be afraid. You have to act. And we all ran away on the streets to buy, I don't know, food, medication, because you don't know what will happen. And we were constantly afraid that internet and mobile connection will fail.
I think most people will recognize the feeling of preferring, in many cases, a terrible certainty to an uncertain future. As human beings, we don't do well with uncertain futures. It's almost apples and oranges, I know, but when the you're in a relationship with someone and then you realize you're afraid it may end, so you preemptively end it. And I think most of us have done things like that in our less mature times. And I think we don't like uncertainty, and we'll sometimes even sabotage uncertain situations for certainty. So I think I understand at least the relief of now you know. I'm going to ask one last question, and then I want to pass it on to Commander McMillan. But my understanding is you're just south of Belarus. So is that something where you've been worried about a full-scale invasion from Belarus itself coming through, and how much has that been concerning you?
Well, first of all, I believe that Belarus is a part of this war. Belarus is a victim of this war too, because they gave up the territories, the political will totally to Russia. And it is annexed by Russia in this cowardly, silent way, something they planned for Ukraine when Yanukovych was a president. I have more hopes for Belarus society than for Russian, and you notice I even say Belarus, not Belarusian. And because they were trying to change something in summer 2020, it seems to me they lack strength, they lack experience, but they have some good tendencies. And in general, their society is brainwashed, but less brainwashed by Russian propaganda. And all Belarus people, they don't want war in Ukraine. They don't want to punish us. If you look at Russian surveys, and I know many positive people all around the world persuade themselves that these are fake researchers, very likely they are not. Russians do have this kind of character when they like invading, punishing, teaching, destroying. So it's very likely that society in Russia, population, as Vlad Wexler says, likes the things that are happening right now in Ukraine. They like when they read about missile attacks, killings, and so on. So Belarus was given totally, and we were attacked from Belarus. I mean, Ukraine, Kyiv, Chernihiv Oblast, many regions were attacked from Belarus. Even now, We have lots of air raids, and missiles can come from that direction, and fighter jets. In my region, for example, it's very typical for this Belarus fighter jets to go in the air, and we have air raid alarm. And sometimes in this publics, you can read, "When will you come down? How many times a day can you fly? Stop it," and so on. So at the very beginning of war, we were very much concerned because, once again, yes, Belarus is also close. Like, I'm close to Poland and close to Belarus. And at the beginning of this war and up to perhaps summer 2022, they had troops, Russian troops, parts of Wagner army, it seems to me, standing close to the border. And that was dangerous. And like we have Ukrainian armed forces on the border, we still have to protect us. And at the very beginning, people were very much concerned with everything. And I remember it was March, beginning of March. We were not yet experienced in warfare. And all over Facebook, there were news like Belarus is going to attack Lutsk at 9 p.m. on the 11th of March. And I honestly, being a smart woman, like educated, able to read, I was honestly waiting for this 9 p.m. Will they attack us? I do realize it does not happen like that. Like, war does not start as an alarm clock or something. But it was like 9:05. They did not. Now, well, I am less concerned, and I don't think they have enough strength to attack us from this side. Of course, they can always send some groups to cause troubles on the border, or they can organize a terrorist act to cause panic and problems, but they don't have enough troops and will to attack us from, in my case, from the north. Plus, the landscape here is quite complicated for them. We have lots of swamps, and people had time to prepare. And I've heard jokes from locals who say that we have protected the border so hard, and some important roads so hard, that it will take us a couple of months after we win to clean them.
All right, so let me actually, excuse me, sorry, one quick, so we have a few new members. 𝐒𝐢𝐦𝐜𝐿 has become a member and has already been very active and engaged. So thank you so much, 𝐒𝐢𝐻𝐿. 𝐲𝐻𝐢𝐿 also has become a member, and Yvonne Way. So thank all of you for supporting us. As those of you who watch the show regularly know, we get demonetized pretty frequently. This show has a 50-50 of getting demonetized, but we talk about adult topics, and we try to do so seriously. And you know that YouTube is not a fan of that. We would succeed far better if we did unboxing videos. I wish that was a joke. It's not. You know, because you get
unboxing. You unbox and you find a dead Russian, and then okay.
Yeah. Well, that would be demonetized, but I think would get a lot of views. Yeah. So, well, my eldest turned 14, and I said, you know, the most successful YouTuber right now is a 14-year-old who's got unboxing videos and made $31 million last year. So why am I doing a news show? What you know, start pulling your weight. Come on. So telling this to my 14-year-old, my wife was like, you know, do you really have to put so much pressure? It's $40 million. Okay, fine. Apparently I'm all unreasonable or anything. All right, Commander McMillan, it's all yours.
Okay. I'm curious what you think the biggest disruptions in your life during wartime are. And I don't mean, you know, friends being killed or the air raids or anything, but I mean just the little things in life. I ask because when I lived in India in 1965 during the Indo-Pakistani war that went on, and the biggest imposition in our lives was that there were checkpoints all over the city, and it took, you know, like 3 times as long to get from one place to another. What are the biggest disruptions in your life right now?
Thank you for this question. I do believe that, like, not being military, I have to speak about and I have to fix these details, because details also matter. and are not a man, which because they have more problems in their life right now, more discrepancies caused by the martial law and lots of obligations that they have, military, I mean. But we do have checkpoints. At the very beginning of this war, there were many of them, perhaps too many of them. Like almost every village built its own checkpoint, and it could take really long. And finally, people realized that they are not protecting, but they are spoiling. There's logistics and so on. So now we have not many checkpoints, but like every city, every important road has them. I don't find it as a problem. And honestly, I remember once again going out on the street on the first day of war and seeing people in the military. There were many of them, like in a second, in a minute, in an hour. And I loved this image so much. I was so happy to see them. So now, when, for example, I vlog and sometimes I want to film something, I never film secret objects, you know. I don't want problems, and plus there are not so many of them in my city. But for example, people support the buildings with sacks of sand, like schools and so on, and I can film that. And people will come up to me and say, please erase the video. What are you doing? You don't have to share that. I'm saying it's not like a secret information, but I'm super happy that citizens are so like active in protecting everything. So it's better that they are so caring. Serious problems of like serious distortions happened during this electricity blackouts. That was really difficult, and that was during winter and when it's really cold, and we were not prepared. You cannot be fully prepared to so many things, and it turned out that so many things depend on electricity. First you think it's just light in your house or computer, but then you realize that mobile operators start working with problems because they don't have enough power for something, and you lose mobile internet. So you lose all internet, and then you cannot buy products because cashiers don't have access to banks. And then water pumps stop working, for example, and you don't get water, even cold water in the house. And it's all so connected that you cannot predict it before it actually starts. From the other point of view, I was super inspired by how quickly Ukrainians adapted. And in a week of this blackout, you could buy everything. Generators were everywhere. You could even buy hot wine on the dark streets. And that was once again like this peak of optimism inside. When everything is dark, I have never seen that much light, you know, in people as during this dark nights and days and cold ones. I hate air raid alarms, honestly. In my region, thank God they rarely end with something serious, and many people are guilty of ignoring them, which is also bad. But banks, universities, hospitals may close because they cannot work during that period, and like the whole day will be ruined with that. So you cannot like sometimes once again, it's not very correct to say, but I saw like super happy school children, like when they are going to school and they are saying, oh, we haven't learned something in that area, and they throw away their backpack and like thank God they don't need to go to school. Well, they don't understand everything, but to some extent, maybe this is good because they are not that traumatized. They don't think that they are persecuted for being Ukrainians. They think they have this chance not to visit school. But air raids are bad. And now they like attacking us at night. And you know that Ukrainian air defense systems work perfectly. And recently, like almost every missile, almost every drone is stopped. But we have to spend nights without sleep and then it's difficult to get back to normal life. Like if you have to continue working, teaching, I don't know, being a doctor or something, you're sleepy because you've spent a night in a bomb shelter, for example. And
Sure.
of course, it's difficult. Plus, we all have this ordinary lives where we have like personal problems, psychological problems, like depressions, I don't know, ups and downs, health issues, and it's all multiplied by war, like because it's difficult, to live just to live a life. Sometimes it's difficult, but when you live it during war, it can be seen everywhere, in every sphere of life. So if you'd ask me about these details in education or in medical sphere, I can give you dozens more.
No, I understand. What about shortages of commodities? Food, medicine, personal hygiene stuff. Is that an issue, or is that
Of course,
logistical
but
flow been good?
once again, it also depends on the location, on your location. Well, people in the regions that are heavily targeted by Russians, they suffer from many things. Why? Not because we don't have the products or something, but because we are grateful to our allies, because most of that are supplied from abroad, because, like many chains of production and logistics are interrupted in Ukraine. It's impossible, like to do something, to get something, and sometimes, from what I know, many of these shortages are the results not of the fact that you don't have something at all. I mean, for civilians, but because it's difficult to bring that something to a specific front line, for example. With the military supplies, of course, it's different, and people constantly need everything. Why? Because the duration of a thing on a front line is very short. For example, I know lots of volunteers who buy and buy and buy and buy cars, and people start asking them, why are you buying these cars? Haven't you bought the car? But they get burned, they get destroyed, they drive the roads that are not roads, but something like. And this life expectancy of a car at war is much, much, much shorter than a life expectancy of a car somewhere else in the city.
Absolutely.
And so people have to remember that. Shortages were very visible at the beginning everywhere, and once again, because of this, logistics interrupted. For example, many people needed medication, and many suppliers from Europe, for example, did not work with Ukraine because they did not want to send their cars to Ukraine. They didn't know how to do it. In a month or two, everything went back to normal, but sometimes it is really heroic to bring the products or to bring the medication to the front lines or to the cities that are close to them. So, of course, it all, once again, the hotter the zones are, the more need people have on that territories.
The more disrupted things are. Yeah.
Yeah, but in general, it is not about food. It is not about clothes, because like we supply our internal refugees and other pretty well together, once again, with volunteers from all over the world. I believe that the priority is weapons and military supplies and specific military medications, because this is full-scale war. It's, even being Ukrainian, when I watch these videos of our soldiers in trenches, how they live there, how they help each other, how a classical medical kilt must look. And I am very happy that we try to use and adapt this NATO standards or other good Western standards, because from what I know, our soldiers, when they look at this medical kits of Russian soldiers, you can feel sorry for them already, because it's good for us. But when to think about that from this human perspective, they have this medical kits dated, I don't know, 1980. And many of these things that you use to stop blood from running and so on, they have dried already. Like you cannot save a person with that. And that's why the priority is weapons, of course, because they help to stop weapons that are targeted on us, because they help prevent more serious damages, and of course they save lives. So all of our people and soldiers, they are very adaptable. They very quickly, like they need a week to understand what they need, where they can get it, and even to start an orchard.
Let me interrupt for one.
One more there, Nick?
Yes, we do, but I want to interrupt real quick. So I do apologize, Anna. My hope was that we could schedule at least 90 minutes. I am going to have to leave reasonably soon. I've got about 15 minutes left, so I'm going to have to go. I do want to get Macmillan's last question in, and then I know Xandring wanted to talk a little bit, so we are going to get to those. But I did forget to do one other thing. Every stream that we have on Ukraine, we do try to donate to the charity of the streamer's choice, and I neglected to ask you what charity you would like to donate to. Now, we did get a super chat. We hadn't followed up with that, but that super chat we will give in its entirety to the charity of your choice. If you can think of one right off the top of your head and want to let the audience know what your choice will be, that's great. If not, you can let me know. We have given with Brandon Mitchell, we gave to the medical battalion. With Starsky, we give to the Vatra volunteer organization. So if you can think of something great, let me know. Otherwise, you can let me know afterwards.
Well, I think of one local volunteer initiative. I have recently donated them money. These are nice boys who had a very good cafe and were known for the best coffee in the town. But then they decided to go to the front lines, and now they assemble drones. So perhaps if it's possible, I would like to help them because it's cheaper. They are able to construct these drones, and from their experience, these spy drones, they are just one time, like they fly and they never return back. So they have to be produced at a very high speed and not expensively. But they collect money to do that. So maybe
if we can reach them through a PayPal account, I think we can sort it out. We will hopefully in the next couple of days we'll put
you with information on them, their official pages and.
Perfect. So do that. We will then include that in the description. And for those who want to see more of Anna, her Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube page are also in the description, but we will have that updated. So any super chat that's been donated thus far or donated in the future today, in the remaining few minutes, I do apologize, we will donate to that organization. $5 from Killer Rabbit of Carbonong. Thank you for the video on bad words to call Russians. I use them frequently at Russians online, but I found I'm recently 1% Baltic Ukrainian.
I think I should develop this topic more further.
Yeah,
there are more bad Russians. There are more bad words to call them.
Swearing, absolutely.
Vein of ore.
So we have 5 CHF. I don't know, Commander. Do you know what a CHF is for currency?
Swiss franc.
Oh, Swiss franc. It's the same one as last time. Okay, 5 Swiss franc from Yvonne Way.
Confused with that.
I do that, and then $4.99 from Michelle Ferguson. So thank you very much. I'm not going to linger on those because I want to continue the interview. We actually also now have New Zealand $5.95. We got a couple coming in. I don't want to linger on them. I apologize. I do want to finish the interview. I'll get to them at the end. So Lance, your final question.
Yeah. What is your opinion, and in general, the opinion of your countrymen with regards to President Zelensky? Has he been doing a good job? Does he inspire you? Does he encourage morale, or is he just the leader and leave it at that?
No, he definitely encourages and inspires. I've told that I was not the one who voted for him. I voted for a different candidate, and many Ukrainians did. And one of the reasons why I did not support him was the fact I was afraid he, in case of direct Russian invasion, he will give up, I don't know, escape or something, because he did not have political and diplomatic experience, and happened just the contrary. Now I think he is a perfect president of war. He is brave and he is a personality, and this personality of his does not allow him make wrong steps. Like, I am sure he will not give up on Ukraine, and for me and for my countrymen, that's important. Of course, all of us have some flaws, and politicians have especially a lot of them, but in general, he is definitely not a traitor. He's a brave person. He feels Ukraine. He feels the pain. I can see it in his eyes, and I am with him. I'm not going like to criticize him, because like there are lots of things I can criticize him. He can criticize me. But in general, he is definitely the voice and the leader of Ukraine, and this is a very difficult task that he is accomplishing, but he does it the best he can.
Thank you.
Thank you for the questions.
I do think.
I guess.
Oh yeah, I wanted to. So I do think that there are sort of people that are citizens of the world, people who are treasures to all of humanity. Churchill, I think, was one. I think Martin Luther King Jr. was one. And Zelensky appears to be becoming one, where it basically, I think everybody of every nation can sit and look and say, here's a human being doing remarkable things. Yeah, I do want to pass it off to 𝐓𝐢𝐬𝐬𝐬 so that he can get his time. So 𝐓𝐬𝐬𝐬𝐬, it's all yours.
I will compress the questions that I have, and I'll ask two at once. There's a group of people, especially in the United States, but I'm sure around the world as well, that are asking, why should we care about what's going on in Ukraine? It's a regional conflict. I'd like to get your opinion on why we should care, people on the other side of the globe. And also, for those who do care, what would be the best way, in your opinion, to help the people of Ukraine?
Thank you. These are very important questions. And my first answer, because this is not a regional conflict. Russia tried to depict it as a regional conflict, and many people all over the world believe that Ukraine is just a part of Russia, a rebellious part of Russia or Soviet people or something like that. But now I believe you clearly see this difference, and this is a huge civilizational difference between us. But for Russia, it is just the start. Same as annexation of Crimea was the first step to invade the rest of Ukraine. The same as Ukraine is just the first step to demonstrate, as Putin believes, the weakness of the world, and to continue 𝐒𝐲𝐬𝐬 Mir doctrine to other countries that once were occupied by Soviet Union. His task is to reconstruct Soviet Union. And yes, in future, that may even mean attack on some small but NATO countries. He will check that. He will check how people react, and that imposes serious danger on all of us. There are no regional conflicts. I have promised myself that since the war in Ukraine, I will never be indifferent to things happening in other parts of the world, because we are super connected. And believe me, things that are happening in Ukraine influence things that are going to happen in Taiwan or Hong Kong, or Georgia had its influence, and Chechnya, and so on. We are very much connected. And we have to realize that in his mind, Putin has already started the Third World War by breaking all the international laws, by demonstrating disrespect to all the alliances, all the rules, all the borders that were fixed. Imagine if all countries will start reconsidering their borders or deciding their zones of influence, and they demonstrate this precedent. And China observes it very attentively, and other authoritarian regimes. And if we win, democratic world wins. But if we lose, authoritarian regimes continue doing things Russia does. It is not a regional conflict, no way. And I believe that people, to be able to continue fighting, to be able to continue supporting us without super fatigue and exhaustion, choose the way that is the best for you. If you're not good at, like, I don't know, collecting money, don't, but start speaking to those who doubt, communicate with your politicians, change the opinion of people who want to be indifferent. If you like various events, organize events that can attract attention and remind about war in Ukraine and Russian aggression. Ignore Russian products. I don't know, react if you see some anti-Ukrainian things. So there are lots of options, starting from donations and finishing with various ideological things and even conversations with your children. Everything matters. Oh, sharing videos of Ukrainian YouTubers. uh, and anything is important, but just like feel that what is closer to you, what is natural to your lifestyle, but think that it is honestly not a regional conflict. Believe a person that did not believe it's possible. I was like confident this cannot happen. Now you are confident this will not continue, but it can. And we have to stop it because this is not just. When you see such crimes as Russia committed in Bucha and Mariupol, how can you close your eyes on that? How can you continue living with that? Do you want it to happen in your neighborhood? And it can, because Russia is a dangerous country with nuclear weapons.
I got your DMs in. I finally got my Discord up. Thank you. Now you one more time for one more if you want, or I can wrap it up.
Okay, well, I do have one more. I know in a lot of streams and a lot of attention is shown on the Ukrainian military, and many of the things they're doing are truly heroic. But I'd also like to know, are there other groups of people that have taken truly heroic actions in Ukraine that don't necessarily get all of the spotlight, and who would they be?
Thank you. That is a beautiful question. There are many. Honestly, I think that many Ukrainians turned into like soldiers, doctors, without the desire to do so. For me, I was observing with my mom's health issues. I was observing the work of the doctors, especially when the electricity was out, and they were heroes to me because people were working long hours. They were buying petrol for generators for their own money. They were thinking how to adjust this medical gadgets, how to protect them because they are super expensive, and how to continue helping patients. They had to be inventive. Also, electricians, they became superheroes everywhere because they had to adapt it. And volunteers are just the second front. They keep the second front. They are not tired. They don't have this choice. They communicate with soldiers who can be in complicated psychological states, and they support them. They never sleep. So, and volunteers, these are people who come from different professions, and I think they are super talented to be able to combine that ordinary life with a volunteer life. So there are many people whom I consider heroes.
Awesome.
All right.
I like hearing about the people that don't necessarily quite get all of the attention that like our military does. There's a whole lot of people that go into making things successful like that. So I like hearing about them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Starsky had said electricians. Starsky had said electricians as well too. Starsky had said electricians, and I think that's yeah.
And like everyone, teachers, I don't know, everyone. This is a fight of the country. It is always difficult to be a soldier, but when you go to front lines, but not in your country, this is one thing. But when your whole country is at war, everyone is supposed to be a soldier to some kind, because this fight is present in different dimensions, like even in your attitude. I had a question like when people told me, why do you have university classes? Isn't that dangerous? They get interrupted with air raids. You don't have enough electricity and so on. But can you imagine like a year without university for our students? What would it be? Like closed universities, students who don't have connections, who feel like their country abandoned them or their country is not real because they cannot study in it. So all is important. Like all these small steps, they contribute to the joint victory.
Well, it strikes me as, in essence, Russia is committing genocide against Ukraine, either by getting rid of Ukrainians and forcing to deport them, trying to get rid of the culture and trying to kill anybody who remains, and having as normal a life as possible, including going to university, including getting married, including trying to raise kids, is its own act of defiance and what is, from what I can tell, an attempt to obliterate the Ukrainian culture from the face of the planet.
Yes, this is. I know many people are afraid of the word genocide, but I'm not. Like, when you witness the things we do, you stop worrying about the words. And this is the genocide that Russia started long ago against Ukraine. And the task is just to first they deny the existence of Ukrainian culture, and then they try to actually accomplish this absence of Ukrainian culture by erasing the country.
Commander, any last thoughts? You may have to reach for his mute button there. Well,
mentioned that he had to take off, so he might not have. He might have went ahead and taken off.
Oh,
No,
all right.
You were right. Okay. I was having trouble finding the damn mute button.
I was trying to give you an out there, man, so you wouldn't. I can't find the mute button.
I acknowledge my incompetence.
That's why we love you.
Any final thoughts, Commander?
No, not really. I keep watching what goes on and looking at the human cost to not the people on the front lines, but just the people, and it's really depressing, and I can't wait for this madness to be finally over.
Zandering, any final thoughts?
I have the best of wishes for Ukrainian people. I think that they've shown what strength and resiliency and a pursuit of freedom look like, and I thank them for that, and I am truly sorry that they have to go through it.
So we do need to get going. Again, I apologize. It's a little shorter than I would have liked. Anna, we had on Brendan Mitchell. It was a spectacular, I think, one of our best shows. And he's looking for streamers to get into contact with. So I'm going to put him in contact with you. Please don't let me forget, because it's a busy day today and I won't be able to take notes. So, but I want to make sure we do that. Thank you very much for coming on. Any final thoughts before we go, Anna?
Well, you have just said in a very beautiful way that Ukrainians demonstrated to the world what strength, bravery, and resilience is. And I think it's important that this story must end with our victory. Otherwise, like, the world is going to be a dark place. So please remember about Ukraine, and let's stop Russia together and build this normal world, safe world with Ukraine in it.
Couldn't have put it better
And
myself.
thank you so much for raising attention, for collecting money, for talking and feeling what it is to be Ukrainian. I'm very grateful for that.
Our genuine pleasure and privilege, Anna. Thank you very much for coming. I hope we can have you back at some point soon when it's not quite so rushed. Sorry for the super chats we did not get to, but I felt it best that we give her as much of a chance to chat as possible. And we will see everybody for overtime Thursday night and downtime Thursday night, and then Operator Starsky on Friday. Join us on the Discord if you want more on our schedule and to see what we're doing to follow up with Ukraine. And thank you all once again. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. See you.